Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, you lovely people. Today we're diving headfirst into the dark, foggy corners of the Nintendo 64 library to look at some of the worst games ever made. While the N64 was home to some timeless classics like Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64, it also had its fair share of stinkers. Games that were broken, confusing and downright painful to play. So as usual, we're going to be looking at 7 of the worst games for the N64. And as I always say, this is not the definitive list, this is just 7 examples. If you feel there are ones that should be on there, please put it in the comments below. And if you think there are other ideas for these top 7 or worst 7 videos I should be doing, please put them in the comments below because, as I said, this channel's not going anywhere. We've got plenty of time to make more videos, so some suggestions would be great. If you want to hear more of me, Retro Wars is also a weekly podcast where me and friends talk about the video games we used to play back when we were kids, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts from. If you want to support the show financially, you can do at patreon.com/retrowars for $1 each month. You get access to your own show called DLC, and you can get actively involved in the podcast. Right, let's get into it, shall we? 7 of the worst games for the N64. Earthworm Gym 3D. Now, the Earthworm Gym franchise started strong on the Genesis, Mega Drive, and the Super Nintendo, beloved for its wacky humour and tight platforming. Like, hell, I loved the cartoon, it was absolutely stupid, like, Earthworm Gym, Sorry, I know, but I love that cartoon, it was great. Now, after the 16-bit era, developer Shiny Entertainment moved on, and the rights changed hands. Interplay took over the series, handing off the third game to Viz Entertainment. And after multiple delays, Earthworm Gym 3D finally launched 1999, years after the mascot craze had peaked. It was like, who is Earthworm Jim anymore? He's kind of gone. Visually, the game completely lost the charm of the earlier installments. While previous games used 2D sprite animation, the N64's blocky 3D rendering made everything feel lifeless. Backgrounds were generic, colours were muted, and character models looked more like rough drafts than finished products. The story tried to explain Jim's absence by having him hit on the head with a cow and fall into a coma. Players journey through his subconscious to wake him up, fighting off manifestations of his neurosis. It was a creative idea on paper, like, don't get me wrong, it's good, but fell apart in execution, lacking the structure or interesting level design. Gameplay was a disaster, the controls were imprecise, the jumping was floaty, and the camera constantly fought against the player. Although, to be fair to Earthworm Gym 3D, in those eras, every game seemed to be fighting against the camera at some point. Combat lacked any punch, with Jim's gun feeling underpowered and poorly animated. Although you could say about the original games it was poorly animated because did it fire bullets? Well, we all imagined it fired bullets, it was kind of weird. It did have a collectathon element to it which helped pad out the game, but didn't really provide any meaningful content. And critics were disappointed by what do you think? By 1999, gamers had experienced Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, which is a better game, and Jim couldn't simply compete. Reviewers slammed the game for its clunky design, shallow gameplay and lifeless visuals. Sales were equally dismal. The long wait and poor reviews killed any momentum the franchise still had. Earthworm Gym 3D did nothing to attract new fans and actively drove long-time ones away. And sadly, the game effectively ended Earthworm Jim as a major gaming mascot. Aside from a few minor mobile titles and a cancer revival attempt, the franchise never really recovered. Interplay's mismanagement played a major role in its demise, and it's a shame because I really do love Earthworm Jim and the whole idea of it. I don't like the creator of it, he can eat poo, but everything else I do love. Today, Earthworm Gym 3D is remembered as a textbook example of how not to bring a classic 2D game into a 3D era, and it's a sad send-off for what could be once a beloved franchise. Clay Fighter 63 1/3. Well, speaking of Earthworm Jim, does everyone remember this one? The original Clay Fighter games carved out a niche in the fighting genre with their clay animation graphics and irreverent humour. And by the time the series made its way to the N64, Clay Fighter 63 1/3 expectations were already modest. But even those expectations were too high for the game that was actually delivered. Instead of using actual claymation like its previous entries, the game utilised low-poly 3D models that looked muddy and malformed. Characters that were once known for their unique look now resembled melted action figures. The visual downgrade was stunning, especially on a system with better looking fighters. The game included a handful of characters with quirky names like Bad Mr. Frosty and Boogerman, but their backstories and motivations were either unclear or non-existent. Attempts at parody and satire fell completely flat, lacking the wit that needed to make them to work. But also, mention Earthworm Jim, he was in this game as well, and this was the only reason I rented it, because it had Earthworm Jim in the game. And yeah, it was pretty shit, so I felt upset. The gameplay was its weakest point, and Earthworm Jim couldn't really save it. Controls were clunky and unresponsive, moves were hard to pull off, and combos barely worked with a hit detection that was wildly inconsistent. There was no depth to the fighting mechanics and most matches dissolved into just button mashing chaos. The critics were merciless here. Reviewers pointed out how dated and broken the game felt, even in the genre that was thriving with better entries on other consoles. The camera was awful, the fighting stale, and the visuals laughable. Despite this, however, Interplay doubled down with a Sculptor's Cut re-release, adding a few characters and tweaking the difficulty. But it was just too little too late. The changes didn't fix the game's core problems, but it remained just as unplayable. However, that version, the Sculptor's Cut version, is a Blockbuster exclusive reissue, and it's considered an absolute gem, so if you can get your hands on it, my god, you've made a little fortune for yourself. Please send it to me and let me know, and you can send it and add it to my little collection. I'm only joking, I'll steal it off you. The franchise did vanish after that, and any plans for future titles were shelved, and the clay fighting name faded into obscurity. It would only resurface years later as a punchline discussions of bad fighting games, like this list of some sort. Yeah, don't be expecting to see this anytime soon. South Park Rally. Now, South Park was everywhere in the late 90s, and Acclaim wanted to milk the franchise for all it's worth. After 2 early N64 titles, they released South Park Rally in 2000, hoping to cash in on the kart racing craze. Who doesn't want to do that? Shrek! Unfortunately, what they delivered was one of the ugliest and most confusing racing games of the generation. Visually, South Park Rally looked like a last-minute student project. The character models were blocky and barely resembled the show's iconic designs. The environments were sparsely detailed, with bland textures and repetitive scenery, and everything was obscured by that good old N64 fog. The game tried to include plot elements from the show, but it lacked the structure. Each race was loosely themed around a holiday or an episode, but there was no real story, and that's hard to do in kart racing. The developers banked on random chaos and crude humour to carry the experience, and that's the problem here, because that only goes so far. Like, once you've heard one joke and you keep hearing it about 20 times, you kind of get bored of it. Controls were floaty and unresponsive, and unlike traditional kart races, the game used confusing multi-lap objectives where a player had to find checkpoints or collect items in odd orders. It felt less like a race and more of a scavenger hunt, which is terrible controls, and that's not good. Critics called the game a complete mess. I'll call it a complete mess as well. It was compared unfavourably to Mario Kart 64 in every way. Well, that's what you're trying to emulate, so of course it's going to be compared to it. Shut up! Even hardcore South Park fans were unimpressed by the constant audio loops and recycled catchphrases. It was a loud, directionless experience. And the game really didn't sell well either. An Acclaim South Park licensing deal would soon expire. And any plans for a sequel were scrapped, and the brand wouldn't recover in gaming until Ubisoft took over years later. And finally, those games are pretty deep, unless you count Snow Day, because Snow Day's shit. But the other games are really good. Its legacy is that of a cheap cash-in, a game that couldn't offer the basics of fun racing, let alone do justice to license. It remains that cautionary tale we keep saying on this channel: just because you've got a licensed product doesn't mean you're going to get instant success when you release it into the wild. You actually have to make a good game. Dual Heroes. Released in 1999, aimed to be N64's answer to the booming fighting game trend, where we heard this before. Developed by Hudson Soft, it tried to bring a futuristic anime-inspired aesthetic into the genre. Unfortunately, the result was one of the most unintentionally hilarious games on the platform. The graphics were an absolute mess. Character models were poorly proportioned, and their stiff animations make battles look like an awkward dance-off, although to be fair, that sounds pretty cool. Backgrounds are repetitive and static, completely devoid of atmosphere or detail. There is a story, technically, about some nonsense about a battle between bio-warriors from different worlds. The problem was, it was completely incoherent and told through stiff dialogue and nonsensical text screens. And no character here is memorable, and no conflict is clearly explained. The controls were abysmal, and the game was built around a pressure-sensitive AI that was supposed to adapt to the player's fighting style, but all it did was create erratic difficulty spikes. The character movement felt slow and unresponsive, and combos were extremely hard to do. Critics had an absolute field day with this one. The game was universally panned for its broken gameplay, confusing mechanics and laughable presentation. GameSpot went as far as to say it was one of the worst fighting games ever made. Oof, and that's from GameSpot. Unsurprisingly, sales were minimal. Dual Heroes quickly vanished from store shelves and from public consciousness. No sequels, no remakes, just a quiet burial beneath better games. Today, it's mainly remembered for its unintentional comedy. The awkward animations and poorly translated dialogue make it meme-worthy title among banked game enthusiasts. But make no mistake, it's still a really shit game, one that tried to be futuristic and innovative, but ended up being completely unplayable. War Gods. Oh, we keep going with the fighting games because there were so many good shit ones on the N64. Midway, the company behind Mortal Kombat, Midway, tried to bring a new 3D fighting experience to consoles with War Gods, a title that originally debuted in arcades. When it was ported over to the Nintendo 64 in '97, expectations were cautiously optimistic. After all, if anyone could pull off a violent, stylized fighter, it was Midway, or so we thought. The visuals are some of the worst on the N64 at the time. Characters looked like muddy blobs with metallic chrome textures that made them appear all wet and rubbery. Animations were stiff, movements were janky, and the hit reactions barely registered. And the stages were bland and lifeless, failing to create any sense of atmosphere, which is a shame because Mortal Kombat games were usually known for having some really atmospheric backgrounds. The story was hilariously generic. Aliens find a magic substance called Kato, and it turns them into godlike warriors who battle for ultimate power. What? What do you mean aliens find a magical substance, and how do they know they turn out into godlike what like we know? Ridiculous. Each fighter had a paper-thin backstory and no real motivation beyond the usual beat everyone else up trope. That's all you need, to be honest, in these things. Just beat everyone up. You know, is it the Pope? Boom! Oh, he's just died. Ooh, that's a bit sensitive. Sorry, everyone. Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to be in trouble for that one. Gameplay was where War Gods truly fell apart. It attempted to incorporate a 3D sidestep mechanic, but it was sluggish and unreliable. Special moves were hard to pull off due to imprecise controls, and the combo system lacked fluidity. Again, at Mortal Kombat, they should be able to do that with ease because they did it, well, Midway did it with Mortal Kombat, but it shouldn't be a problem, but obviously it was. Critics were merciless in their reviews. Many compared it unfavourably to Mortal Kombat 4, which at least had polish. Mortal Kombat 4 is not the best game in the world, we've ripped that before on the podcast, although they had some brilliant endings, but that's a side note. War Gods were described as ugly, boring, and completely devoid of depth. Nintendo Power gave it a scathing score, and others echoed the sentiment. The game flopped commercially. Arcade cabinets quickly disappeared, and the console version bombed at retail. Midway had hoped to launch a new franchise, but the poor reception guaranteed it would never happen. Its legacy is mostly seen as a laughingstock. It's sometimes cited as a stepping stone towards better 3D fighting games, but that's a generous interpretation. The reality is, War Gods was a rushed, misguided experiment. Today, it stands as proof that not every 2D franchise or developer was ready to leap to 3D. It's a relic of the awkward transitional phase of the mid-90s fighting games, because yeah, even though Midway did do Mortal Kombat 4, that wasn't exactly a good game. You go play that. I could put that on this list if I want to, because that is not a good game. I'll fight anyone, it's poo. The only good thing, and I know this is a complete side note, is Kano's ending, or Jax's ending, because that is goddamn hilarious just to hear the sounds that come out of Kano's mouth and being thrown off a cliff. Sorry, I get a bit emotional with these things. Dikatana. Now, Dikatana is infamous in PC gaming circles for its disastrous development and marketing. John Romero's gonna make you his bitch still haunts marketing textbooks to this day. But just remember, this train wreck actually made it to the N64 as well, in 2000, just in time to completely miss the console's golden era. The visuals were severely downgraded from the already dated PC version. Murky textures, barren environments, and choppy frame rates plagued the N64 port. And again, you think, why do we even release this then if it's not even going to work? But okay, who cares? When it's out, it's out. Enemy designs were bland and levels lacked any detail or personality, looking more like prototypes than finished areas. The story remained pretty much the same. A katana-wielding time traveller must stop an evil empire from ruling the world. What could have been an epic sci-fi tale turned into an incoherent mess with poorly explained plot points and forgettable characters. On the N64, all the voice acting was removed, as probably for the best, and much of the narrative was reduced to brief text blurbs. Gameplay was absolutely gutted in the transition. The complex, if clunky PC level design was replaced with stripped down linear stages. AI companions, infamous for getting stuck or dying constantly, were removed entirely, which ironically improved the experience but left levels feeling lifeless and empty. No, I want to see the AI companions. I want them in there. I want to have those experiences of them getting stuck and dying constantly and me just getting outraged because it's absolutely dog shit. Critics tore it apart, as you'd expect. The N64 version was called soulless, bland, and technologically backwards. Even for a system that had seen its fair share of mediocre shooters, Dikatana was rock bottom. Most players never got past the first few levels due to awkward controls and lack of direction. Sales were almost non-existent, releasing so late in the N64's life, and if the PC version bombed, it had zero buzz and even less consumer interest. The cartridge has become a footnote in one of gaming's most famous failures, so expect to see it on Nintendo Switch Online soon. And while the PC version of Dikatana has been dissected endlessly, the N64 is just more of a ghost, a forgotten port that existed only to satisfy a publishing contract. In the end, Dikatana on the N64 represents the complete implosion of a hype project. Late, broken, irrelevant, and slightly buried. Superman 64. And now we reach the crown jewel of N64 disasters, Superman 64. It was always going to be on this list. Because if I didn't put it on this list, you guys would have lost your bloody mind, wouldn't you? Come on, let's be honest. Developed by Titus Interactive and released in 1999, it was supposed to let players become the Man of Steel in a fully 3D world. Instead, it became one of the most hated video games of all time. Graphically, it was an embarrassment. The infamous kryptonite fog covered nearly the entire screen, allegedly to help the frame rate. Buildings were barely textured cubes, and Superman himself looked like a blurry action figure. The game world felt like a half-finished tech demo. Lex Luthor has trapped Superman in a virtual reality version of Metropolis. Why? Who knows? It was never really explained. Missions are incoherent and there's no emotional investment, just endless busy work. Flying through those bloody rings became the game's defining feature and its greatest sin. Most levels start with Superman awkwardly maneuvering through tight corridors of floating rings with unresponsive controls. Miss too many and you'll fail. Why? Because you do. Just consume slop. Get on with it. It's not fun, it's just punishment. Combat is simply laughable, and Superman throws slow punches and awkward kicks. Powers like heat vision or super strength are only available in specific missions, which is ridiculous. It's like, it's Superman. You should be able to punch someone and then just crumple in their own weight of their own piss, and just literally go through the vision and go heat vision, heat vision, dead. This is Superman. This is not like Batman. I know Batman's as hard as nails. I know you're going to argue Batman could be... I know, I'm not disputing that. But I'm saying Superman could literally just body everyone in seconds. Not even seconds. You can blink and it's all done. You can be a DC nerd if you want on here and put it on here. But you know what I mean. It's insane. Like, no one should ever survive a punch from Superman. Not like a average man. The average man could survive a punch from Batman. Nobody average man is surviving a punch from Superman. Let's be all honest. You know that's the case. The game was annihilated by critics. IGN gave it 3.4 out of 10. That's very precise from IGN, calling it a complete mess. GameSpot gave it a 1.3, or it's even more precise, out of 10. Reviewers cited bad controls, ugly visuals, and terrible mission design. Players who bought it out of curiosity were quickly filled with regret. Now, despite the Superman license, sales were poor. Again, just because you've got a licensed game doesn't mean it's going to sell well. It did manage to gain notoriety, but not for its success. It gained it because of how crap it was. The PlayStation version was cancelled, you wonder why, and Titus, already facing financial trouble, would shut down a few years later. Superman 64 does live on in infamy. It appears on nearly every worst game of all time list, and it's not just bad, it's historically bad, and often used as a gold standard for failure in game design. To this day, flying through the rings is shorthand for lazy, repetitive game design, and Superman 64 didn't just disappoint fans, it scarred them. So there you have it, 7 of the worst games ever to hit the Nintendo 64. And what do you think? Do you think I got it right? Do you think there are ones I need to put on here and there's ones that shouldn't be on here? Well, let me know in the comments and what you think. And if you do believe I've deserved it, please give a like and a subscribe and follow me for more content. My name's been Danny and I'll see you all in 3 days' time for another video. You all take care of yourself. Bye bye.